Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Unfortunately, this will be the last Duels gameplay for the foreseeable future, but don't worry, there will be more Magic content with your support, so make sure to check out the announcement video where I talk about the future of this channel. There will be a link in the description, but for now we're taking a look at the Junt Midrange, which features the most powerful cards from Black, Red and Green from Magic Duels history. So also just a very fun deck to play with. So there's a few cards here from Amonkhet as well, so let's take a look at the entire list, starting out with our 1-drops, where we have Oath of Nissa, a nice enchantment that gives us some card selection by letting us take a look at the top 3 cards, and we can select a creature, land or planeswalker, and then Oath of Nissa also helps us cast our planeswalkers later in the game. We also have Fatal Push, a nice efficient removal spell for just a single black, takes care of vehicles nicely, and we can also enable Revolt with lands like Evolving Wilds. Then we get to our 2-drops, where we have Deathcap Cultivator, which is a nice mana ramp creature that fixes our mana for both black and green, and it's also realistic to achieve Delirium in this deck, giving the Deathcap Cultivator Death Touch, which is a nice bonus. Then we have Sylvan Advocate, another powerful 2-drop that's a 2-3 Vigilance early in the game, and then later in the game, when we hit land number 6, turns into a 4-5 Vigilance creature, which also pumps up our land creatures, so that's a lot of power for just 2 mana. We also have a Nissa Vastwood Seer, which searches up a basic forest when she enters the battlefield, and then can also transform into Nissa Sage Animist to provide some more card advantage. And we don't really mind if they kill Nissa Vastwood Seer, since she already got us a land. We also have Tireless Tracker, which can also provide a lot of card advantage through the clue tokens she generates whenever we play a land, especially nice in combination with Evolving Wilds on turn 4, getting us 2 clue tokens right away. We have 1 copy of Reclamation Sage, which we can also tutor up with our Woodland Bellower, so she can take care of annoying artifacts or enchantments like Sphinx's Tutelage. We have 1 copy of Read the Bones, which smooths out our draw, letting us scry 2 and then draw 2 at just the cost of 2 life, which is quite reasonable, and also just provides some card advantage. We have 1 copy of Radiant Flames, just a nice cheap sweeper against those aggressive decks out there, but most decks will have creatures that die to it, so it's a nice one-off to have access to. We also have Liliana the Last Hope, which is a powerful planeswalker which can shrink down opposing creatures and return creatures from our graveyard to our hand, and the ultimate is also game winning. We have a Nissa Voice of Zendikar, which makes plant tokens and can pump our team, giving them +1/+1 counters, and the ultimate's also quite nice. We have Kalitas Traitor of Ghet, which is a nice one in combination with spot removal spells, which we do have a fair amount of, so a 3-4 lifelinker that makes a 2-2 zombie whenever we kill and exile one of the opponent's creatures, and we can also sacrifice those tokens to make Kalitas larger, which is nice on a lifelinking body. We have 2 copies of Pia Kiran Nalaar, which is a nice one since it makes 2 Thopter tokens, so great against spot removal spells since we'll still have those Thopter tokens flying around, and we can also sacrifice artifacts to deal 2 damage to a creature or player, so we can both sacrifice the Thopters or maybe a clue token that we don't need anymore. Then there's the Aftermath card, Cut to Ribbons. Cut is just great by itself as a 2-mana sorcery speed removal spell, dealing 4 damage to a creature, and there's lots of 4 toughness creatures that are important to kill. And then Ribbons can also be a nice finisher late in the game, X double black, and each opponent loses X life. Then we have Chandra, Torch of Defiance, another nice planeswalker that can be used as removal, can add mana to ramp us a bit, and can also provide card advantage with her +1. Ultimate also game winning. We also have 1 copy of Arlinn Kord, which is nice with our new Exert creature Glorybringer, since giving an Exert creature Vigilance means you can use the Exert and don't have to worry about the creature not untapping, and also just a decent card by itself, making Wolf tokens, and then using a Lightning Bolt with the -1 on the backside. Then of course we have Glorybringer, nice 5-mana dragon, 4/4 flying and haste, and we can exert it, dealing 4 damage to target a non-dragon creature, so make sure the non-dragon part here since it can't kill opposing Glorybringers. Then we have Verdurous Gearhulk, another nice one, 4/4 trample that can distribute 4 +1/+1 counters. Ob Nixilis Reignited, another nice one. Can destroy a creature with the -3 right away, and also draws cards with the +1. It's kind of a common theme with the Planeswalkers. Liliana, Death's Majesty, can make zombies, can return cards from our graveyard, and can also ultimate to destroy all non-zombie creatures, and of course the tokens she makes are zombies, and the creatures she reanimates are zombies in addition to their other types, so that's nice. And we have Noxious Gearhulk, which is a nice removal spell on a stick. 5/4 menace, enters the battlefield and destroys a creature, and we also gain life equal to its toughness, so this helps us stay alive. Then we already mentioned Woodland Bellower, which is a 6 mana 6/5, can search up a green creature card with convert mana cost 3 or less, has to be non-legendary so can't search up our Nissa, but Tireless Tracker, Sylvan Advocate and Reclamation Sage are all fair game. Another Chandra here in Chandra Flamecaller, which is an additional sweeper effect with the -X here, but can also pressure opposing planeswalkers and just kill the opponent quickly with the +1 ability, making 2 hasty 3/1 elemental tokens, and can also improve our hand with the 0 ability. And then last but not least, we've got Never to Return, which is a nice planeswalker / creature removal spell at sorcery speed, and also an Aftermath card which can be used to exile a card from a graveyard and make a 2/2 zombie token. And then our mana base, we've got 26 lands because our curve is pretty high. We've got 3 swamps, 3 mountains, 4 forests, then lots of duels. We've got Hissing Quagmire, which can turn into a 2/2 Death Touch creature, then Smoldering Marsh, 2 copies of Cinder Glade, then some of the check lands here in Woodland Cemetery, Rootbound Crag, and finally Dragonskull Summit, and then of course 4 copies of Evolving Wilds to fix our mana and to go with our Tireless Trackers. So that's the deck, now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, let's have a look at our opener. We're on the play, but unfortunately no green mana, otherwise we could keep this with Oath of Nissa. And yep, this is a keep. So we have all our colors, and we'll start with a tapped Quagmire here, so next turn we have access to Deathcap Cultivator. And then we can go Swamp into Summit, and the Deathcap Cultivator can also help us cast our double green cards like Nissa. Opponent with a Bowman Courier, so they're probably on an aggressive red or red-black artifact deck. So the Courier is going to hit us and is going to hide a little present. So we could Fatal Push this, but I think there will be more important targets such as vehicles that we need to tag with Fatal Push. Now we did draw Sylvan Advocate, which is an interesting wrinkle. So we could play the Advocate, which blocks the Bowman Courier, which forces action from the opponent, or else the Courier can't attack. But then we wouldn't be able to cast our Nissa next turn since we don't have double green, unless we play the Oath of Nissa. We could technically also play Oath of Nissa, which helps us cast our Nissa Voice of Zendikar even without double green, and then keep up Fatal Push. But I feel like just playing the Sylvan Advocate at that point is better, and then next turn we can maybe go Oath of Nissa, keep up Fatal Push, and then take a look at Nissa Voice of Zendikar. Certainly an interesting turn, but I think we'll go with the Advocate here, just because if we are up against an aggressive deck, I want to preserve our life total, since I'm not worried about winning the late game. So let's see if the opponent has a way to get through. Of course, we could always draw into a green source to cast our Nissa. So double mountain into Smuggler's Copter, so next turn we definitely want to keep up our Fatal Push if possible. Opponent can no longer attack with the Courier. And this would have made playing Nissa a pretty bad play, since the Copter can just fly over and kill it, unless of course we had the spare mana thanks to the Cultivator to also play Fatal Push. But for now we'll attack for 2. If the opponent crews the Copter to block, we can Fatal Push. Let's see if they go for it. They do not, so the opponent takes 2. So I think I like developing my mana here by playing the Cultivator and keeping up Fatal Push. And then next turn we can potentially both play Oath of Nissa and Nissa herself, if we manage to take care of the Smuggler's Copter. So Ether Hub from the opponents, indicating perhaps a second color. And a Lathnu Hellion means business here. So that's gonna hit us for 4 since I don't envision blocking. And does the opponent crew the copter? They do. So we'll Fatal Push that before the opponent gets to attack with it, because I don't want them to draw and discard. And yeah, I'm not going to block the Hellion, so we'll just take 4, but then we'll have a steady stream of plant tokens to chump the Hellion with. Opponent forced to pay 2 energy, I think. Yep. Alright, cut, also a nice one. Would let us take care of the Hellion, and we could still play Nissa if we had the Oath of Nissa in play, but we don't. So we don't get to do everything here. So if we want to cut the Hellion, then we would only be able to play the Oath of Nissa, so we would be playing the Oath of Nissa first. But I think just making a plant token is fine against the Hellion, since that can just chump block, so that means we have to play Oath of Nissa first, so we'll start with that. Take a look at what we can find. Glorybringer or another Deathcap. I'll take the Glorybringer here. We've got plenty of mana to work with. And then Oath of Nissa being an MVP here lets us cast our Nissa Voice of Zendikar. And now the question is, do we leave back the Cultivator or do we attack with it? I think we can attack since we still have the Sylvan Advocate on defense as well to block the Bowmat Courier. And even if the Bowmat Courier gets through, it's not the end of the world since it's just 1 damage. So looking pretty good here. If we can resolve Glorybringer next turn, we'll be in great shape. If the opponent has to expend a lot of resources to take care of Nissa, it's also not bad for us. And there's an Aethersphere Harvester, alright, so that's pretty annoying since can pressure our Nissa and can also block our dragon. And their opponent's playing a second courier. Let's see if they attack with everyone here. Or if they're just gonna force chump block. Alright. We will be chumping with the plant, even though Nissa might not be long for this world. Since we can actually put a +1/+1 counter on the Glorybringer with Nissa, making us able to attack past the Harvester. Opponent uses the energy from the Harvester, and they also play the second Ether Hub, so they actually have 2 more energy to sink into the Hellion. But we don't actually mind since we do have the answer to the Hellion in hand, and I think we will be exerting. This is actually interesting. I feel like exerting the Glorybringer has to be good here. But then of course we don't have a chump blocker on the ground. So yeah, let's -2 Nissa. And then I think we attack with everyone. Opponent could double block with a Bowmat Courier and the Harvester, I guess, so the Advocate does not have a free attack into the Aethersphere Harvester here, so I guess we have to keep that on defense. Could also keep the Glorybringer on defense actually and just use it as a blocker, but I feel like attacking for 5, taking out a Lathnu Hellion has to be good. And then sure, our Nissa dies, but then we still have a pretty impressive board state and a removal spell in hand, which we can also use to maybe drain out the opponent later. So let's get a forest right now and say go. And then we have to see what our opponent does. I imagine Nissa will go down here. Do they have their own Glorybringer perhaps? Would be able to snipe our Advocate before we hit land number 6, which would be quite good, but we do have an answer to the Glorybringer in cut. Instead they have a Hazoret, which is also quite good since it can attack here, since the opponent only has 1 card in hand. So they will be hitting us for quite a bunch. And of course a removal spell doesn't line up well against an indestructible god. So I think we'll take 5 here. And then I guess hope to hit a land so our Advocate becomes larger, or just find an answer to the Harvester. Alright, Radiant Flames. Question here is, would we rather cut so that we have the ribbons in a graveyard for next turn? So if we just cut the Courier, we can attack for 6, putting the opponent at 6. Next turn also our Glorybringer untaps. The opponent will gain 3 life, go back up to 9, and they can potentially deal us 9 damage, so we wouldn't quite be dead unless of course they use Hazoret's ability, which is also possible, so then we would be chumping with our Sylvan Advocate. I think we just cut away the Bowmat Courier here. And the opponent can sacrifice it, but it wouldn't really do much. Besides maybe empty the hand for Hazoret purposes. And now we get to attack for 6. Or we could keep the Deathcap Cultivator on defense, just to chump block the Hazoret, but I feel like getting him for 3 has to be worth it. And then our Sylvan Advocate is probably gonna end up chump blocking here. So we could also consider flashing back the ribbons, but I feel like we just have to hope to drain out our opponent with it next turn. So yes, we might have to chump block here just to stay alive. Which can crew the Harvester. And the opponent still has the Hazoret activation available. So if they attack with Hazoret and the Harvester, we are forced to block Hazoret with our Sylvan Advocate. Opponent also will gain 3 life most likely. So the Aethersphere Harvester has done a lot of work this game. Opponent gets in with everyone. They see that they get to attack with the Courier for free if we don't have anything. And in fact we're forced to chump here. Harvester gains a lifelink. And we take 4. And do they have a last card in hand that they want to cast? They say go. Well, if they don't have anything, they are just dead to our ribbons here. So let's see. Yeah, it's more efficient to use ribbons for an extra than it is to attack with the Hissing Quagmire. Opponent could maybe have a Madness card that they can discard or something. But they are out of energy, so they just have red and then 3 colorless. So I think we just attack for 8 and then try to flashback ribbons. And yeah, even if they kill the Cultivator, they are just dead to ribbons for 4. So we will not be exerting, I think, no real reason. So opponent takes 8. No, they have a shock for the Deathcap Cultivator. So they just take 5, but we do have the land. Otherwise we could have just tapped the Cultivator for mana if we wanted to play around a removal spell like Shock, but we didn't have a reason to. And there we go. Cut to ribbons. Ribbons for 4 takes the game, showing the power of the Aftermath cards here. So we'll move on to the next one. Okay, let's have a look at our opener, which looks acceptable. We are on the draw, so we'll get an extra look at a land, plus we have Oath of Nissa, Liliana, which we can cast thanks to the Oath. Should be alright. Opponent leads with Isolated Chapel, so might be a black-white control deck, maybe some Angels as we take a look at the opponent's avatar. So yeah, let's lead with Quagmire, say go, next turn. We have Oath of Nissa and Fatal Push as options. We even could consider cutting a creature. And there's a Selfless Spirit, which we can nicely take care of with our Liliana, so don't want to spend a removal spell on that. Evolving Wilds a draw, which means I think, let's see. I think we want to use the Oath of Nissa before we fetch, since I really want to keep hitting land drops, so if we fetch first we would be thinning out our deck a little bit. So let's play the Oath first. Basically looking for lands here. And yep, those are 2 lands, and I think we'll go with the Summit since we have a mountain in hand. And then we can play the Evolving Wilds and say go. And the Evolving Wilds could get a forest, which I think makes the most sense, since we have some double green cards, we already have double red, double black. Opponent hits us for 2, and hopefully they don't have a follow-up creature here to pressure our Liliana with. They do not. So looks like Liliana is in the clear. Get a forest, and Oath of Nissa doing overtime here, letting us cast our Liliana even though we don't have double black. And let's get rid of that Selfless Spirit. With the release of Amonkhet, there are a lot of tools for black-white to get rid of our Planeswalker. Never to return, one of them. Opponent could have also had Cast Out, so I did not really expect our Liliana to stick around, but this is still a fine 2-for-1 trade of sorts. So we could just play out our Pia and Kiran here, which seems okay, although opponent likely to have something like a sweeper effect in black-white. But I think playing Cultivator doesn't do all that much here, so sure, let's play Pia and Kiran. Say go. Our hand's not looking great, lots of answers, not a lot of threats. So if the opponent does have an answer for these Thopters, then we might be in trouble. And there we see a Languish. Still kind of strange that you play the Spirit and the Languish in the same deck, but of course they are both powerful cards, just not the most synergistic ones. So I think we'll just have to play Cultivator. Don't want to activate Quagmire into a Fatal Push and lose a land. So we'll play Cultivator, play Forest, and say go. If our opponent has a card like Cast Out, then we do have the Reclamation Sage to get rid of that. And there's a Thalia Heretic Cathar, which we cannot Fatal Push since we don't have Revolt enabled, but we can Fatal Push this Gifted Aetherborn. And then we can just use our cut on the Thalia if we so desire. Rootbound Crag the draw, so here want to make sure to cut the Thalia before playing our land, otherwise this comes into play tapped. And then we can also serve with our Quagmire and get in for 4. Although of course our opponent can just hit us back with the Shambling Vent and gain 2 life. So not necessarily a great race, but gotta do what you gotta do. And next turn we will have Fatal Push up to potentially take care of the Shambling Vent. So does our opponent have a big finisher? Nope, they're just activating the Shambling Vent, which kind of indicates that they might have removal spells in hand as well. But yes, we will be saving the Reclamation Sage just in case of something like a Cast Out. And alright, Verdurous Gearhulk, that's a powerful one. I think it's okay to go with the Gearhulk. Certainly want to put at least 1 counter on the Gearhulk itself so it survives another Languish. Question is, how many do we put on the Cultivator, since our opponent's likely to just kill our Deathcap Cultivator here. Think we... let's see... probably want to go 1 on the Gearhulk, 3 on the Deathcap still, just to spread out power and toughness a bit. Could also see going 2 on the Gearhulk, 2 on the Cultivator. Yeah, maybe that's better. 2 here, 2 there. And that resolves, so we do get to attack with the Cultivator. Opponent might have a Blessed Alliance or something. And in fact, they have a Grasp of Darkness, so that's fine. We do have the Fatal Push for the Shambling Vent, but of course now the opponent's no longer attacking. So we have a 6/6 in play. Does the opponent have something like a Planeswalker? Nope, they're just casting Return. And they can actually snipe our ribbons here, so that's pretty nice value from their Never to Return. And a Read the Bones, alright, so that's actually quite good for them, as they get to refuel. So this game might go pretty long. We could Fatal Push the zombie, and I think that's fine. We might draw into something that uses up all our mana, and the opponent's not gonna block anyways and just hit us back for 2. And I feel like the Shambling Vent is not gonna get activated for a while. So I think we hit for 6. Question is if we want to play the Cinder Glade or keep it in hand in case we draw Tireless Tracker. The argument to play Cinder Glade is if we draw into Read the Bones, which maybe wants us to play the extra land and cast multiple spells. But given that we have 2 trackers, I think it's fine to keep the Cinder Glade in hand. There we see Selfless Spirit once again. And another Read the Bones, alright, so our opponent's kind of going off. And a 3rd land. So now we have to consider also attacking with our Quagmire, just to play around the Blessed Alliance. And I think that makes sense. So let's fire up the old Hissing Quagmire. And attack with both. This forces a block from the opponent if they don't have anything. They do decide to trade. We could consider just playing out the Reclamation Sage for additional pressure to play around maybe a Blessed Alliance. Would be bad in the face of a Planar Outburst or in the face of an enchantment. Opponent could have drawn into a cast out, which would make us look pretty silly if we play the Reclamation Sage now, but I think overall I want to apply more pressure, and this Reclamation Sage is lethal, so let's not blow up our Oath of Nissa. There could be reasons to, if we want to enable Delirium for Deathcap Cultivator, for example, and our mana is perfect for our Planeswalkers. And yeah, we get punished by Planar Outburst. Opponent even gets to awaken it, putting the counters on their Shambling Vent. And Arlinn Kord. This could have won us the game had we not played the Reclamation Sage, because then we could have given it +2/+2 and haste. Of course, we didn't know we were gonna draw Arlinn Kord, so now we just have to make a Chum Blocker Wolf token, which is pretty sad. Don't have anything in the graveyard. And I should not have tapped the Dragonskull Summit, since now we can't represent Fatal Push. So let's say go. And the opponent is quickly gonna gain life back here with their Shambling Vent. And the opponent has a few more cards in hand than we do. Shambling Vent gets activated, so basically gets +2/+3. Do we also see removal on the Wolf? We do not. Now the question is if we would even want to save Arlinn Kord. It's only good for making a Lightning Bolt, essentially. I think we would rather have the Wolf token than a Lightning Bolt, so I think we just let this happen. And let's see if we can find something good. Chandra. I guess is not bad, but of course is also just going to die if our wolf dies. And if we try to kill the Shambling Vent, our opponent can animate it in response. So we would not be able to kill the Shambling Vent. So we would be forced to use the +1 just to take a look at the top card. And I guess in that case we should also play out our Mountain in case we find a 3-drop we want to cast. So let's see what happens. Plus, and yep, I will cast Fatal Push. That's actually a very good draw. And of course the Awaken means that the Shambling Vent is a creature, even though it's not activated. And now we get to Surf for 2 with the Wolf. Opponent does have removal for it, but we do have a Planeswalker in play, but there goes Chandra with Anguish the Making. Alright, back to square one. Opponent at 5, but they get the first draw step, and we're at 16. Still don't have double black since we lost that Hissing Quagmire. So double black spells might not be castable unless they're Planeswalkers. Alright, there's our Black Source, but I guess we keep this in hand in case of Tireless Tracker action. And I don't think our opponent has anything that makes us discard. So opponent might be accumulating either lands or removal spells. As we keep accumulating those as well. Well, that's a problem. Gideon, ally of Zendikar. And the opponent still has 4 mana up, so even if we top deck a Glorybringer, it's not guaranteed to take care of Gideon. Well, we're not drawing great. I guess we'll keep the Evolving Wilds to go with Tracker and play out the Cemetery. We should have some pretty good draws left in the deck. Opponent's going to activate Gideon, hit us for 7. Or they're just going to hit us for 5. Maybe afraid of a hasty ground creature. They say go. Well, the deck's not really cooperating. But I will keep playing out our lands in case of Read the Bones. Could also consider using the Evolving Wilds to thin out our deck. So opponents can hit us for 7, or yep, they're going for 7 now. Put us down to 4. Opponent still has 4 cards in hand. One of them I'm assuming is at least a land, but might have some removal spells in there, as we see a Thalia, which means that the Glorybringer is going to enter tapped. And the draw is an interesting one. Liliana, that's Majesty, but any creature we get back is also gonna enter the battlefield tapped. And we can only get back creatures from our graveyard. So we could get back something like a Pia and Kiran or a Verdurous Gearhulk, but then we're just dead on board. And anything else we try is also not going to work, I guess. Let's see, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, we could have tried to mill another cut to ribbons in our graveyard, but unfortunately we have Evolving Wilds which enters tapped. So I think we're 1 short here if we do mill a ribbons in the graveyard to just drain out our opponent. Well, actually we're 2 short. So if that also doesn't work, can't think of anything else. Guess we'll get back Pia and Kiran. We can use the ability, of course, from Pia and Kiran. So we can shoot down the Thalia and the Knight token, but we're still dead to the Gideon. Unless our opponent decides to attack our Liliana, of course. But nope, Gideon does become a creature. And we will see Gideon attack us. And yep, that's going to do it. We can deal some damage with our Thopter. But we are dead. Alright, a grindy game. Our top decks didn't help us out in the end. But yeah, hopefully still an interesting game to watch. So on to the next one. Alright, let's have a look at our opener, which looks okay. Just lots of lands that enter tapped. I guess only the Summit enters tapped, so never mind. Yeah, this sounds great. So we'll lead with the Summit since that always enters tapped, and then we can go Forest into one of these other ones. Next turn we have the option of Advocate or Cut, and then Liliana, the Last Hope. Do we see a 2-drop creature? If our opponent plays something like a Winding Constrictor, I definitely want to cut it. It is a Glintslave Siphoner, which we can leave in play since we do have Liliana to answer it nicely, so don't want to spend a removal spell on it. So instead we get to play Sylvan Advocate here. And then next turn we can go Cemetery into Liliana. So it does look like the opponent's on a black-green energy deck, which means Cut is probably gonna snipe a Winding Constrictor, as there we see it. But I think it's still okay to use Liliana here to get rid of the Siphoner, and then prevent our opponent from drawing a card from the Siphoner, and then hope our opponent can't do anything too broken with the Constrictor next turn. As we even drew a Chandra, which can also deal 4 damage. So definitely close. I could see just cutting the Constrictor to avoid any nonsense. But I think we want to attack with the Advocate. So let's attack first. If the opponent blocks, we can also just Liliana away the Constrictor post-combat, which would also be fine. Opponent just takes it, meaning their Constrictor is very valuable to them, which might be a reason to just use our Cut. But then we are not really curving out nicely, since now we get to curve just Planeswalker into Planeswalker. So yeah, let's just go for Liliana and hope our opponent doesn't play lots of cards that make counters. And we can even consider chump blocking should our opponent have something that makes the Constrictor very large. We see Tireless Tracker, alright, that's fine. Plus a land, so the opponent could be holding on to a Blossoming Defense. So we have to keep that in mind. A second cut, alright, that makes it easy. So let's see here. I think we want to attack first with the Advocate. Opponent might block with the Constrictor, but then it dies to Liliana. And I'm fine trading the Advocate for the Tracker. So let's attack for 2. Opponent takes it. And now we get to go cut. And I think we target the Constrictor first, so that they do have the Blossoming. Then they might use it there, since the one we really want to kill here is the Sylvan Advocate. And no Blossoming Defense, that's good. So we get to keep ticking up our Liliana. And we have the Advocate on defense to block the Hissing Quagmire. If our opponent plays a big creature, we have plenty of answers. Nissa's Pilgrimage did not expect that, so opponent is going bigger than we thought. Would have been very nice for them in combination with the Tracker, but of course we had to meddle with the opponent's plan. So they just sack a clue, 4 cards for the opponent. And Nissa, also interesting. I think we just want to Ob Nixilis here, and draw a card, and then next turn we can potentially go Nissa, get a land, and then our Advocate becomes larger. So let's draw some cards. And Radiant Flames also could be good. So get to hit for 2. And now we have 2 active Planeswalkers. And next turn we might have 3 active Planeswalkers, maybe even 4. Let's see how the opponent answers. 7 mana, they could have some hasty green creature like Gaia's Revenge. Instead they have a Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, which we should be able to deal with, and a Bristling Hydra. Alright, that's actually annoying since the opponent now has 6 energy, so they can give it hexproof twice. And they'll make a plant token as well. But we do have Liliana to take care of the plant tokens, which is nice. And I think we just have to protect Liliana and try to ultimate her. Did find land number 6, so we could actually go Nissa plus Radiant Flames, but that doesn't really accomplish much. So if we make this into a 4/5 attack, opponent can use Bristling Hydra twice, make it into a 6/5. So that would not be great. So I think we start by drawing a card with Ob Nixilis. See what we can find. Another Sylvan Advocate, alright, that works. So now we get to go Nissa, find a land, this way we don't reveal we have land number 7 lined up. And now we get to shoot down the plant token. I guess we could still attack and then consider using Radiant Flames to get rid of the Hydra. But I feel if we just play another Advocate and ultimate Liliana next turn, we have 3 blockers back. 2 of them survive Languish, we should be okay. And I don't really see the opponent getting back from a Liliana ultimate. They will fire up Hissing Quagmire. And we see a minus from Nissa. So I think we just want to trade Advocate with Quagmire and then chump the Hydra. And I think we would rather chump with... that's actually interesting. I think chumping with the other Advocate is fine. This forces our opponent to use some energy here. And then we'll have 3 active Planeswalkers. So yeah, this seems fine. Opponent does indeed pump their Hydra. And first things first, we will ultimate Liliana, and there's a second Liliana, that's pretty convenient. Now what do we do with Ob Nixilis? We could minus. We have 2 ribbons in the graveyard as well. So I think first things first, we want to attack with our Nissa before we transform it. And see if that works. If the opponent had removal, they probably would have used it already. So Nissa down. Then we play the land, flip Nissa. And it's actually interesting what we do with our Nissa here, I think. We want to draw a card first with Ob Nixilis, see if that changes our plan. Kalitas, alright, alright. So Liliana can get back Sylvan Advocate. Can't get back the opponent's creatures. We could just make a token, which also seems fine. And then that would be it. We could also plus Nissa. Could make a 4/4. I think we just plus to draw cards. Hissing Quagmire hits the battlefield. So let's just play Liliana and make a zombie. And our opponent has 3 planeswalkers they have to deal with. Plus Liliana Ultimate, and conveniently we had a zombie from our other Liliana, which speeds up our other zombie count. Nissa Vital Force is not going to save them here. Nothing really that scary they can return. Can make a land into a 5/5 by all means. So we could triple block the land and then chump the Hydra. They get to pump the Hydra once, so we could also just put 3 tokens in front of the Hydra and then chump the land, which seems probably better. So Hydra down. And Kalitas plus Liliana Emblem also pretty nice. Opponent with Longtusk Cub with 5 energy. So that can grow up to a 4/4, means Chandra can still kill it. Alright, so what do we do here? So many options. I think we want to plus here first. Read the bones, alright, so now we can ultimate Ob Nixilis. Opponent gets an emblem. We get to read the bones here. And don't want more lands. Got lands anyways. Opponent loses life from our emblem. And let's see, we could Chandra kill the Longtusk Cub, but I kind of want to get this Kalitas in play first. And then the question is, do we return something from the graveyard, or do we just keep making zombies? I think making zombies is pretty great when we have this emblem in play. So let's play Kalitas, let's see what we milled over. A return, also relevant. Now we can play Oath of Nissa, probably should have done that first before playing Kalitas. But can't imagine many better draws. We'll get the Quagmire, and we'll play the Quagmire. And that's a pretty decent turn. So now we've got 2 emblems, which should close out the game, so we just have to make sure we don't die to something random. And next turn we can also just use a Ribbons, which we may have been able to just kill our opponent last turn, didn't really check. But yeah, these are the spots where you're so far ahead that you tend to make small mistakes since you're not optimizing every single play, since it doesn't matter all that much, but always have to be careful of course, since one top deck can change the outcome of a game. But it looks like we should be getting there. Draw never. Opponent loses 2. And I think we want to play out our Chandra, which can minus to kill the Cub. That works. We exile it, get a zombie. We cast a Never on the land, could also use it on the Nissa of course, but that's fine. And then why not return something from the graveyard, or doesn't matter, let's just go to combat, put the opponent out of their misery. And that should conclude it. We'll get more zombies end of turn, so I'm fine attacking with everyone here, even if the opponent has a fog, and there we go. Sweet, I wanna thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching Magic Duels with me, and I hope you'll stick with me with Magic Online. But for now, I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.